In my opinion, I consider you to be one of the best chameleons just working on stage and screen today.
Oh,
And
thank
you
you.
know, of
I
course,
try. I try. Sometimes I hit the ball, sometimes I don't. So,
I think you always hit the ball. I mean, if you compare performances like from the Jesus to now Carmine Falcone, they're completely different performances and completely
good.
different characters. And I love that. You lose yourself in these roles. So I really wanted to ask, can you speak to your personal process about how you become the characters that you're portraying?
Well, you start with the script, you start talking to the director. Obviously, there's a lot of films were made about Batman, television show. There's the Frank Miller comics that Matt Reeves was sort of inspired by. There's the original DC comics from the 30s. My eldest, Amadeo, works for DC Comics, so I have an expert to confer with. Uh, but, for example, I thought, well, if he's the guy behind the scenes, one mark that he has is this big scar that someone scratched him. It looks like, which I think was important. But I thought well, maybe he should have these like dark glasses because he's like someone who doesn't. He's sort of subterranean, almost like Batman comes out at night. He doesn't really come out that much. And I thought if I could find the right pair of glasses, that would maybe I don't know, just sort of, I have my own mask. And Matt liked that idea, and I found these great glasses, these period glasses. And that was like the first little key. Because I thought, there's these people who, they've been in power forever, but they swim, they swim underwater, and they can figure out people's vulnerabilities and when they have the opportunity, they come in and say, listen, I'm going to help you. I'm going to be your friend. And then what they do is then you're indebted to them. And then they take advantage of that. And they're sort of predators. People do this and businessmen do it. Politicians do it. Certainly, criminals do it. So you're looking for a lot of people who are that way don't see themselves that way. They have their reasons for being that way. Uh, so I was so you piece it together and then you don't know exactly with the costume and the makeup. It's a collaborative thing, and Matt was very collaborative and let me try it a lot of different ways. And sometimes we would do things that didn't even make the cut that were really interesting, but so you get to at least try it and not have it vetoed. So when I'm free, then I can descend more and sort of get rid of yourself and also use yourself within that. So it also depends who you're playing with, and if they do something that changes your performance, and you have to be aware of that, even though you've done a lot of, prep within that, and I would have liked to have had more scenes with Zoe because we have obviously some kind of connection in the movie, but I was really intrigued by that relationship. So
I thought it was the collaboration with Matt was just super transformative, in my opinion. I love that aspect of it. I would have loved to see you with Zoe as well because there's so much going on in the scenes that you guys have, and you say so much with a lot of just the expressions on your faces and everything without really having to say single lines at all. There's a lot going on there, and I can't wait for audiences to see what lies behind those secrets and those connections with different
yeah,
characters.
yeah,
Um, for me, Carmine Falcone, and for readers everywhere, he's a mainstay in the Batman legacy, in the Batman mythology, going back to just Frank Miller's work, as you
right.
referenced. And the last we saw him, on film was Tom Wilkinson's iconic performance from Batman Begins. When somebody comes along like Matt and asks you to portray someone so iconic, does that give you any pressure? Did you feel any pressure from taking on the reins of that role?
Well, I'm certainly not going to look at the other movies. That's not going to help me at all. Maybe I'd look at movies from the 1930s or something. But I went to the Frank Miller comic, and I saw what influenced him,
Mhm.
obviously, and uh, obviously he was influenced by The Godfather. It's very clear. And I know The Godfather backwards and forwards in the book, and even some of the inspirations for The Godfather too. So, uh, a lot of those guys that The Godfather was based on, they kept a low profile. The ones who didn't get killed right away, and they were, you know, they lived, even the lifestyle was like sort of very simple, though they were really powerful. And so I took that as like a clue, and then, you go from there, you know what I mean? And actually, a lot of times what Robert is doing in the scene as Bruce Wayne is going to affect what I do. It's going to make your character look a certain way, how they talk about him. I mean, I was struck in the movie when I saw it, how many people talk about him. And so then when you come on, you have to kind of fill it, but sometimes you have to almost less is more,
Mhm.
which is a lesson that you figure out as as you go get older and stuff like that.
Of
I mean, I'm
course.
from the theater, so I had to kind of learn that early on. That I don't have to, project as much and things. But I think how a character is seen is really through the other characters too.
So Batman has just the most legendary rogues gallery in all of comics history, in my opinion. And I have to ask, you put your stamp on that gallery by your performance as Carmine Falcone. But if you weren't asked to play Carmine Falcone, would there be any other Batman villains that you would have loved to portray, or any other Batman
I
characters?
think any of them. I think they're all interesting characters. They're
Yeah.
all interesting characters, and I thought the characters in this movie, Paul and Colin, and they're all interesting characters. And some people have done fantastic, performances that way. I mean, Heath Ledger, obviously, who was a wonderful actor, and,
Mhm.
and other things too. But yeah, I would have, yeah, yeah, I would have been, interesting no matter what, and especially working with Matt, because he really put a lot of care into it and tried to keep everything really grounded, which I thought was interesting in a way for one of these kind of films, you know.
That is one of my favorite things about the movie, actually, is that instead of taking cues from your typical blockbusters, it pulls from detective noir, from
Right,
gangster movies.
right.
In addition to the preparation, I know that you mentioned The Godfather, and of course you read some of the seminal graphic novels. But did you pull from any of those classic movies, like let's say
Oh yeah,
Maltese Falcon or White Heat, for the performance?
sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a film historian, so I have my Criterion channel, and I'm a big James Cagney fan, but I also loved film noir. Like if you want to say, one of the great ones of that is Out of the Past. I'm a huge Robert Mitchum fan, so and he was in a lot of film noirs. But there's a lot of those movies. They were considered B movies, but they had uh, complicated plots, and they were metaphorical about what was going on, in society. So yeah, there's a there's a simplicity and a complexity to a lot of those films. Maltese Falcon, obviously is one of those. But I love those films, and I mean there's so many ones. There's the one with Night in the City with Richard Widmark, Jules Dassin, and you go on and on. There's great French film noirs. There's great Japanese film noirs that Kurosawa made. It's a great genre of that, and so I kind of I love that genre. And they used to do it so well. And I think Matt, I mean, I can see some of Matt's references. I mean, he's a big Kurosawa fan. I can see that. I mean, I caught him on a couple scenes. I said, well, that's from High and Low, and that's from this one. And he was like, yeah, how did you? I said, well, yeah, I know my Kurosawa. So, yeah, I mean, that's like I mean, honestly, one of my acting heroes is Toshio Mifune. I mean, one of the greatest actors ever, bar none.
Absolutely. Well, you guys have made another classic in the subgenre. I want to thank you so much for your time. This was
Thank you.
amazing getting to speak
All
with you,
right.
and so is the movie, and so is your performance. So
All right. Thank you. You're
thank
very,
you,
it was
John.
very nice to talk to you.
Very wonderful talking to you too.
All right.
Lectures, fanboys, professional artists, and professors. Maybe a nerd who's just like you, talking about the things that you like too. So I invite you to the NOC. In full color, you see me. The Hard Knock Life.